I'm gonna have to fucking do it again. Hello, no, not hello. Hola chicos y chiquititas. Bienvenidos al archivo de datos. I hope that's how you say it. And I'm
I
here
think your
with...
first one was better.
I speak that language. You did it perfectly.
So who am I here with? Who are these smug motherfuckers who are just commenting over my attempt at bringing multiculturalism into this goddamn podcast?
We've got Aya. It's been a while.
Kia ora, it's Horse Fry.
Hello, it's Pokey.
Alright, with introductions out of the way, for those who are just joining us, this is a podcast where we go through Ciconia. We're gonna be talking about everything regarding Ciconia Phase 1. If we do have anything regarding Higurashi or Umineko that might tie into the chapters we're covering, we'll cover that at the end after a clear spoiler warning. Yep, so we totally forgot that the data archive doesn't work like that. It was supposed to only have spoilers up to the point we're covering, but since we collectively have 2 neurons and they're competing for 3rd place, this episode's gonna be different. Hopefully next episode we'll remember to record it as it should be. Sorry for the inconvenience, and I'll leave you with the longest data archive episode to date. I was editing. So basically this is just we go through the chapters and we analyze the things that the chapters in. Before that though, let's catch up. What have we been doing, people?
I've been on break.
I've been doing a lot of stuff. Most primarily, I've been doing a lot of stuff related to, like, transitioning. On more, like, minor recent things, though, I've been psyoped into Toho, and I'm actually enjoying it quite a bit.
Not another fucking Toho fan.
I started with Toho 6, and I got to the final boss in a few days,
Ooh.
which is allegedly pretty impressive. I haven't beaten any of them yet.
It's allegedly very impressive.
I've almost beaten 7 as of a couple days ago, and then that's the only 2 I've really put any actual amounts of time in. But I've enjoyed them a lot. They're fun. The characters are charming.
Well, I'm glad you're liking it. I've tried getting into Toho, but it's too hard. Way too hard. I respect anyone who gets through this
It's a little difficult, yeah, I'll agree. I can't imagine, like, playing that on hard mode. Like, I play normal mode, I'm like, this is normal? What do you mean there's a hard mode?
Yeah.
Speaking of Toho, there's one thing I've noticed that I find quite funny. Do you know how in Toho, when you die, quote unquote die, you can just drop a bomb and that like they like kind of forgive you for dying and you can actually keep playing. I've noticed that's exactly what happens with cars.
Like, if you get into a car crash and, like, you explode, like, they forgive your...
No, not really, but, like, I don't know what the expression is in English, but, like, when you unintentionally let the car turn off. You know that thing? You know when that happens?
You run out of gas.
No, like, when you aren't controlling the goddamn properly.
Like, engine failure? Like...
It's not an engine failure. It's on the pilot. It's not on the mechanic.
It's a skill tech to turn your keys off before you get into a car crash.
Oh no! I completely fucking forgot. In America, you drive automatically. Do you also drive automatically in New Zealand?
Yeah, most people drive automatics in New Zealand.
Okay, so you don't fucking know about this. But when you drive manual, you gotta have some skill, because otherwise you're just gonna unintentionally let it turn off on itself if you're going up a cliff or something. But, like, there's a trick to it, because if you feel the car is fucking dying, you just the acceleration pedal, like, you guess it all the way to the bottom, and then that helps you, like, keep going and the car not turning. So it's kind of like Toho when you drop the bomb. This is way too convoluted. I did not want it to be, like, take this long. It should have taken less time.
It's called a death bomb because you die when you do it in real life.
I thought you were going to tell me about drifting, how, like...
You turn your car off and get smashed into by the person behind you. No, I know what you mean now.
Okay, well then, Horsefly and Pokey, you two were spoiling each other on what you've been doing when I got here, so why don't you tell the class what you've been doing for real this time?
Busted.
Well, Since this is a Toho Secret Tea Party now,
Yes, the Toho Secret Tea Party.
I'm playing a game called Toho Lost Branch of Legend. I've been meaning to, but never actually got into the shmups. But this fan game's really good. It's like a if you've played Slay the Spire, it's like a roguelike deck builder, which is like a really fun like concept, I suppose. And it's just like they've just like slapped Toho on it. But it's also like they've made some changes. Like there's coloured mana, which is actually quite a cool addition.
So it's a nice mechanic system.
Yeah, as I say, like if you've played Slay the Spire, you've played 90% of Lost Branch of Legend, but like the cards are different.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, what about you, Pokey?
I guess I'll keep the Toho train going.
No.
Because I've been playing a lot of No More Heroes lately, which is a game by
Which is not Toho.
Toho. It's by Suda51. They also made Killer 7 and Flower, Sun, and Rain, but you probably know No More Heroes before any of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, the main character is an otaku. He really likes a series that's highly inspired by Toho, and there are some Toho-inspired levels, and that's the extent of my knowledge about Toho.
I mean, fair.
I've also been playing a lot of Disco Elysium.
Oh,
These
yeah.
are two games that I started a long time ago, and I've been meaning to get back to.
Yeah. Mushroom would be going crazy if she was.
Yeah. What else did I do? I wrote an essay about Higurashi.
Right.
That was
Oh, yeah.
That was pretty crazy.
I completely fucking forgot to
Oh,
read that.
you should.
I still need
It's
to. I definitely will.
It is good.
Sorry.
Except for the type where I misspelled Sumi Horoboshi.
Right, I think you pointed that one out.
I think I said
What did you write?
Sumi Hororoboshi.
Oh, yeah.
That was stressful to write, and then I remember that when I finished it, I was watching like a no commentary of Higurashi episode or chapter 6 for inspiration.
So you were just reading Higurashi.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
basically
yeah.
I wanted to like remind myself why I loved it so I could force myself through it. And I just remember that around the time where I finished, it was exactly that like point where the line where Keiichi goes, "This tragedy is over."
Oh my god, that's
Like that
amazing.
line, and I just left it on the TV where I was watching.
That's amazing.
Yeah. No spoilers for the scene itself, but
Right.
Yeah.
this night is over. The tragedy is finished. So that was not fun at the time, but I think I'm pretty proud of the essay.
It's iconic.
I hope it's well received.
Yeah.
I thought it was really good. I did read it.
Thank
so.
you.
Did you publish it
It
somewhere?
was for a competition.
Yeah, it's for the game developers conference. It'd be really bad if I forgot the name of it. There's gold winners, platinum winners, silver winners. I could get to go to California and make a presentation about my essay to a whole bunch of people, and it's really great because
That'd be
I'm trying to get my
awesome.
foot in the door. Yeah, for the games industry.
Bro, it'd be such a fucking life achievement if they flew you out to California to talk about fucking Higurashi. I wish that
Yeah,
was
I get to
me.
make a poster about it. If I win.
Whoa.
Bro, what a life achievement.
I hope I'm not thinking of the wrong person, but you also did the play, right? Earlier last year?
I did do a play last year, and that was inspired by Disco Elysium, which I had not finished.
Ah.
Yeah. Well, not just any play, it was like, it won. You won the competition. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have
me and-
experience with winning competitions, Pokey.
Oh yeah, I never thought of it that way.
In a way, like the favorite contestant, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's about it for me.
As for me, speaking of Toho, my life has been having nothing to do with Toho. I have successfully immigrated to England. That's where I'm at
Okay.
now. I have 0 friends or family in a range of like thousands of kilometers.
Ah.
It's fun. It's funny. It's basically having to start my life all over again from 0. It's going well. I was very lucky with the people I'm working with. It's a really nice work environment.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm free now. I can have dinner whenever I want. I can basically do anything whenever I want. Like, you hear this? Ah, you didn't hear it. Shit, I just opened it here. That's the sound of freedom.
That is.
I thought I heard
Nice.
like a fork, and I'm like, I mean, yeah, I guess you can have dinner whatever you want.
Yeah, I can just electrocute myself on an egg. Yeah, that's something I can do too. Who's gonna say the good? Oh yeah, I want to say this. Why do the British have this bad reputation of being cold and generally not very nice people? They've been so fucking cool with me ever since I came here. Like way better than even my people back in Portugal. Like they're so open to helping you. You don't even need to ask for help. Like I had just stepped out of the Uber and I was looking for my home and like I hadn't even finished opening Google Maps and there was already someone asking me if I needed
That's
help.
actually really sweet.
Oh, that's nice.
That's nice.
It's crazy.
You do have a friend.
Yeah, that wasn't the only instance where it happened. Like, there's just been so many examples of people just being super helpful out of nowhere.
Sweet.
So yeah, I just wanted to debunk that myth.
I was just going to say it's a shame that you didn't move to America because then you could say you have experience dodging bullets, and then that wraps right back around to Toho.
Oh no.
Yeah, the moment I step out of the plane, I start holding shit.
You see a red dot appear under your heart, like.
Yeah. I mean, maybe if you were dodging throwing knives. I don't know if that's a thing in Britain.
No, they just don't know how to eat chips. Like, I cannot find a regular sized pack of chips. Like, regular sized pack of chips are just a lie. They just come with 6 smaller packs of chips inside.
What?
What?
What is this? Oh, and everything. Yeah. And everything closes at 6 p.m.
Oh.
Like, I was in a clothing store buying bed sheets for my bed, and then I was in a very friendly manner, but I was still being kicked off the store because it was 6 p.m. and they were closing this. Everything closes at 6 p.m. Like, what do these people do during nighttime? Like, do they go to sleep at 8 p.m.?
I think
Like,
they just have
what is
time
this?
after work to like spend with their loved ones.
Okay.
How based of them.
Okay, I guess.
Des, did you move from a big city in Portugal to a like a small town or medium-sized city in
It's
Britain?
actually weird to actually answer that question because I have come to realize that big cities in Portugal, they have the same feeling of smaller cities here, even though the small cities here are bigger than big cities in Portugal. Does that make sense? So, like, in terms of size, this city is way bigger than mine, but in terms of how it feels, the nightlife and everything surrounding it, my city was much more active, and it had
Right.
much more buildings and like much higher buildings than the buildings you just see, which is weird. Yeah, but I'm liking
Yeah,
it.
it sounds cool.
Should we get into Ciconia now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do it then. This chapter opens with a quote. I can't decide which. Ah, shit. What the fuck did I do?
That's down. This is why he should have played more Toho.
The fork poke back.
Oh no. Okay, give me a minute. I'll explain it in a second.
I guess while we're buying time, I think we can open with the quote, but I think technically these chapters are bookended with quotes, not opening with them. Because if you go into the chapter select menu, it doesn't start with a quote.
Oh yeah.
It's interesting to think that the way we format this is entirely based off of the like subjective opinion of one Let's Player on a something awful forum.
Oh really? I just used the actual game.
Yeah.
All right.
Yay. Okay, I am back. I do not know what triggered it, but the beer I just opened started erupting out of nowhere.
It got angry. It got
Yeah.
very, very angry. It was seismic activity.
I don't think we should be like covering Ciconia or something. This must be a sign from the universe.
Must be some guy in a red hat messing things up.
So this chapter, it opens with a quote, I can't decide which is more full. Using warlike means to say you're for peace, or using peaceful method to say you're for... Like, no, John Winston. And from my understanding, and the little research I did, neither the quote nor the quotee seem to be real, a reference to any. And I tried thinking of what the quote could possibly mean, and I guess using warlike means to say you're pro-peace could be kind of like a wealthier country sponsoring one at war so that a victor could emerge and then actually end the war. And then using peace to say or for war could be something like waging political wars instead of military ones, or just a criticism, whip service. And
Yeah.
Just to catch you up, Des, Pokey was saying that in the game, these are actually bookends, not opening quotes. It's just the something awful forum that we've been using, which like, it's understandable because they've just been playing through the game and picking a point to stop.
Wait, really? That doesn't make any sense, though. That doesn't make any sense, because this quote, like, it fits perfectly with what we're gonna be covering.
Yeah.
I think that it's an in-between point, because the last one was all about the terrible news, and, like, Tojiro had his rant. And I think that this quote bookends that chapter because it leads into what's happening this time. And then the quote that's coming at the end of this chapter bookends it, and then I can't remember what happens next, but it's probably going to relate to whatever happens next too.
It is.
Yeah.
It really feels so thematically fitting for this quote to be before this chapter.
Since the game doesn't differentiate, the only thing it does is like I think Pokey was saying the chapter select. If you select this chapter and the chapter select, it puts you beyond this quote, so you don't actually start from this quote.
Right. Yeah, it shows the quote and then the doomsday clock, and then the next chapter starts. But like I said, I think it's still related to this chapter 100%.
Okay. At this point in the story, there are tensions rising all over the world. There's conflicts all over. And then our favorite 10-year-olds are forced to support the walls of peace with Megazord Mega Lasers on their left hand. This time, Warcat has been dispatched to attack 4D printers, which is something that comes up a lot, and I find it very interesting because, of course, there would be fucking 4D printers in the world of Ciconia. I could just imagine instead of having to fly or drive your machinery to the war zone, you would just kind of like teleport it, but not really teleport it. You would just like build the goddamn machine there with 4D printers. It's so cool. Like the story never explains to you how they work, but you just infer it by the name that's how it would be used. 4D
I assume
printers.
it has something to do with the pockets that Gauntlet Knights use. Like the fourth dimension is like where they store all their shit.
So you mean they could maybe they're not actually printing, they're just bringing things over from the pocket?
I think that
Yeah,
my understanding of the actual like definition of 4D is limited, but there's the one definition which is that like you got the 3 dimensions of space. I can't remember which words go to which, but after I think volume comes time in some definitions, and that'd be the 4D in some variations. But also there's the idea that fourth dimension is if you were able to see through a cube and see the other edges, and those edges can interact with the actual outer edges. That's like a fourth dimensional shape. I don't remember. Some 13-year-old made a video about it, and that's where I got that knowledge. It was pretty cool.
I really like the idea that in this setting the fourth dimension could be time, because what would that mean? Does that mean that in order to print, let's say, a tank in a certain location, they have to drive the tank there at a certain point in time so that they can like reverse the position of the tank to be there later?
That would be really cool.
That would be such a cool world building limitation for the
You just wake up one day and you have an entire arsenal of tanks, and you're like, all right, well the only catch is we have to drive these to this particular location at like in 9600 hours, and if we don't, the entire space-time continuum will be destroyed.
No, not like that, but like in games when you open your minimap and you can just teleport to anywhere you've been before.
Oh, like a checkpoint?
Kind of like that. Ciconia is so fucking cool for just imagining what kinds of things could exist in this world.
Yeah.
I'm so sad it's never gonna continue.
Man.
I mean, we'll probably get to that later.
Should we talk about that?
Later.
We're gonna talk about that later.
Can of worms.
Let's move that to later.
Yeah. Can I just say on 4D, because like I think I hear a lot of people say like, oh, the fourth dimension is time, but like I just wanted to point out like there's like you don't order dimensions. Like we say you live in 3 dimensions, but like no one can really say which one is the second dimension and which one is the third. Like, you just have up, down, left, right, forward, back, and like, those are arbitrary coordinates that you put on free space. So, like, the fourth dimension is the same. Like, the fourth dimension could be another spatial dimension, or it could be time, or time could be the sixth dimension, or the seventh, or the eighth. Like, yeah.
There's apparently some kind of famous physicist who's talked about what dimensions mean up to the ninth, but I haven't watched his presentation. But that said, I've heard it explained that each new dimension of space, at least, adds, like, a right angle onto the last one. It's a way of thinking about it, of just adding a right angle in the terms of adding a new axis. And so I like to imagine that 4D is, like, the right angle it just adds, like, the freaking ethereal plane behind everything. And you just draw, like, things from that into the material world.
I think that's exactly it. Like, if you were able to move in the fourth dimension, you wouldn't necessarily have to move it. Like, you could be sitting in your chair where you are right now, and you'd be moving, and like, it's kind of weird to imagine moving in the fourth dimension, because I assume your surroundings would change unless they're exactly the same in the direction you move into. When you think about time travel, like, if you think of sitting in your chair and time traveling and everything's changing around you, like, it'd probably look like that. But it might be spatial, so, like, who knows what Earth looks like? Oh, that's a tesseract. That is a cube in four space.
Yeah.
You have a square in 2 space and a cube in 3 space and a tesseract in 4 space. Like, that's what they think is the best representation of it. But, like, the one thing that's wrong is that every angle in that drawing is a right angle. So we've got, like, the cube inside the cube, and the lines going into the, like, from the outer cube corners to the inner cube corners. All of the angles between, like, those lines and the lines of the bigger cube and the lines of the smaller cube, all of those should be right angles, which is impossible because you're drawing in kind of you're drawing in 3 space represented on a 2D piece of paper. So, but if you imagine all of those are right angles, if you are somehow able to imagine that, you'd be thinking about a cube in 4 space.
I feel like the thought exercise of trying to imagine what moving in the fourth dimension would, like, actually look like is a little potentially impossible. I don't want to say, like, fruitless, because it can be fun. But, like, do you think that, like, an anime character can imagine what it would look like to walk out of the screen? Because that is, like, 2D to second dimension to third
I
dimension.
feel like there was a movie about this.
So
There's a visual novel about this. It's called Umineko.
True! My favorite part of Umineko was when Ushiromiya Batara just, like, reached his hand out of my computer and, like, slammed my head into a table. It's crazy how good Miyakishi is at writing.
Okay. Anyway, besides Workat, we also have Kingfish. We also have Kingfish and Triple Burger, which are amazing names for characters, let me just say. And then Meow fucking hell. Why is the English language so hard sometimes? Admonishes those other 2 characters because they're showing off. They're just showing off. Which, I mean, maybe the blue box system isn't that flawless. But yeah, they're just showing off instead of focusing on the mission. And so Meow.
I mean, are they showing off, or is he saying that just so that they won't try and attack one of the other Ketes instead of doing what they're supposed to, which is just destroying drones?
Yeah, that could be it too. But, like, if he's saying that, it's because they have shown off in the past.
How do you think they got that name? Like, because they've got, like, the other two, like, Warcat and Kingfisher are both named after animals, and someone was just like, yes, I really like cheeseburgers, so we're gonna name them.
No, they're named after a cow.
What?
And like, there's 3 people in a Kete, right? So it's like, yeah, all 3 of you are burgers. What does that mean?
They all come from a long line of fast food employees that have ascended to Gauntlet Knights.
all three of them were discovered because they were the ace team in like the greatest McDonald's in the country. They were like the most efficient because of their CPP power. They were able to produce burgers at an unbelievable rate, and they were discovered when the when the leaders of the Gauntlet Night program went out to have a bite to eat. They were like, "Wow, that was so fast."
No, you know what they are? They're the descendants of the the founder of McDonald's, the founder of Burger King, and the founder. There's no
Wendy's.
third big burger.
Arby's?
Wendy's.
Is Wendy's
Carl's Jr.
I don't know. I don't know those brands. Is Wendy's a burger thing?
Wendy's is a
Okay,
burger
so it's the descendant of Wendy's. But yeah, I don't know all these brands, but I will. Because the UK has all these different brands that I didn't know in Portugal. So I was strolling today. I was strolling by Krispy Kreme, and I was like, holy shit, I know that name. I gotta try that sometime.
I used to work in fast food, and you need, like, CPP levels to be able to do that job and not lose your mind.
Really?
I believe it.
Like, I saw a video the other day of a man just jumping into the drive-thru window. Has that ever happened to you?
There was a time when some lady, like, really wanted her ranch that she forgot to ask for, and she, like, tried to back her car up, and she backed into the building, and that's the closest to that. But in Florida, there was an instance where somebody threw an alligator through a Wendy's window.
What?
He was charged with assault with a deadly weapon.
Florida man.
Florida man, take me by the hand to the land of the Florida man.
Shut the fuck up. Anyway, let's keep going. We're moving on to a actually surprisingly good chess metaphor.
Impossible.
Yeah, Rukishi did the impossible yet again. Because Miao's Keta, they believe a chess piece cannot ascend to a player. So to impede the game from happening, the pieces must instead think of other ways to impede the game from continuing. So one of the ways to stop the game from actually happening is for the pieces to hide themselves, a proverbial denial to fight. Except that would just have them swapped for the other countless other kids dreaming of being a Gauntlet Knight, becoming the so-called replaceable ones. Yeah. You see, that was also when I realized, oh, so that's where the subtitle comes from. So instead, they decide to play fight and only attack machinery, so that the actual players can cool off and be able to easily reach a compromise. With no deaths to complicate the matters. Snap back to Bible Squad. Ling Ji has watched too much Vinland Saga, or maybe just TikTok, as she gives an inspiring speech to all her fellow no enemies motherfuckers, reminding them the only missions they have are to not die and not kill. All this boldness turns out to be a front as she catches herself in an inner moment of doubt before pulling herself back together. They might just be stalling, but their actions, or lack thereof, do have an impact nonetheless. And even if one person can make a difference, imagine what thousands of 9-year-olds with a bazooka and a dream can do. In reality, turns out avoiding killing people is surprisingly easy, as the widespread deployment of drones and the advent of the god ex machina that are Gauntlet Knights made regular soldiers almost obsolete in the fate of such military might. In this mechanized battlefield that Miao sees as a blessing in the name of peace, on the other side of the world, the delusional duo of Lilia and Koshka instead see an opportunity to go wild and start flying amok on Goblin mode. Meanwhile, Chloe is struggling, or pretending to struggle, depending on what theories you believe, against all the drones when an incoming message from Bible Squad alerts them of their arrival. Amidst the competitive but friendly banter between the two Ketas, we can see that despite most of George's brain juice having ended up in Tojiro's cranium, some of it splashed into Momotake's, and this spoon of a man enables voice chat just to say, "It pleasures me to hear that. I will hold back, but forgive me if I do cause some level of injury."
Yeah.
How's my British accent coming along?
Well, it's good considering that he's not British.
Yeah.
he's Japanese, but I mean, I was trying to reach his levels of what should I call poshness, or attempt to.
Poshka.
This man really has no reason. He's out here trying to be as charming as can be. He's trying to be Leo from Rose Gun's days, but he's just Momotake.
He ain't Leo.
He just cannot. No one can reach Leo. Butler can. Butler, not to be confused with Butler.
When
Go
you
read
were
Rose Gun's days. Go read it.
when you were studying normal human interactions, Momotake was studying the blade.
Yes.
Can I change the topic a little bit? Because I just want to talk about the drone paradise that they're in, where, hey, we don't have to kill any people. We just have to kill waves upon waves of battle droids. They're not sentient, right?
It's kind of like Toho.
I was gonna say.
I mean, it is interesting how drones are portrayed in this, because, yeah, like up till now, it's like they're just portrayed as like these inept battle droids that, like, you know, can't hit anything. So, like, you know, who really cares? They can't kill anyone. But we do see later on, although admittedly it's not because one country sends them against another, but for a different reason. But we do see later on the amount of absolute, like, terror that is drone-based warfare, because inevitably they get turned on civilians. That's just how, like, war seems to work.
I was gonna mention that later, because the in a later part of this chapter they do say that, like, oh, the reason drones are so widespread now is because people have warmed up to them. Because in the beginning they were afraid of drones turning on people, but they're cool with them now. And then,
That would never
like
happen.
5 chapters later,
That's
they're
so
killing
funny.
people.
I also pointed that out in my notes because I was saying that let's see, the rise of military drones in A3W era is attributed to the era's policy of maintaining a healthy military balance, which is some propaganda bullshit. But I also like how in this narration, it's Meow. Meow is the one who's talking about how the drones are used so much because people can wipe right through them without needing to worry about casualties. And he's not even considering whether or not the drones are harmful to people. He's just considering whether or not they can be harmed, which makes no sense. It's a very naive way of thinking about it, and I guess it speaks to his strength.
No, I think I think it actually just serves to illustrate how integrated into their normal lives drones are. Because if Meow doesn't even think about drones turning on people, it just means that they have never, or if they have, it must have been a very rare case of it. In all these years that drones have been used in A3W, they've never turned on people. It would be kind of like if someone in our day and age were afraid of what? Let me
Your
think.
computer turning on you.
A Roomba?
Yeah, kind of like that.
It's like literally like Y2K.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I guess my point...
It's just normal.
The point I was trying to make was not so much about drones turning on you, like Terminator style. It was more like, drones exist right now, and I'm not worried about them becoming self-aware and just seeking to destroy all humanity. I'm just worried about the guy on the other side being like, yeah, you need to strategically bomb the city that Horsefry lives in, and then they're going to bomb my house, because that's how bombs work. Like, that's really scary, because drones are potentially a way to prosecute war on a way, like, way beyond what we can currently do. Like, and I think, like, the whole idea that, like, oh, drones will be great because it'll just be drones fighting drones and nobody will die. It's like, it's thinking about war in a way that hasn't been true since the end of the First World War. Like, in the First World War, most of the casualties were, like, the young men recruited to fight. And then in the Second World War, it was by far civilians. Civilians died way, like, a significantly larger volume of civilians died than soldiers. And since then, that's been the case for every conflict. It's the deaths of the majority civilian. So, like, the whole drones thing, I don't know, I just wanted to point that out because I just find it interesting.
It's interesting that you point out that it's Meow who says that, and that you call him naive for that, because we're gonna see many more instances of Meow being naive later on in this chapter.
I also
And to be fair, he's like 9.
Yeah.
So
I always forget how old he is.
Is
The
he
thing
9?
of-
He's not 9.
No,
I don't
he's
think
like
so.
14,
He can't
like,
be 9,
14,
no.
18,
Yeah.
somewhere in between.
I don't
Yeah.
think he's 18.
Less than 18, more than 13, I'd say.
Yeah.
Isn't Jaden like 16 or something? So I think
That
he's, like,
sounds about
14,
right.
15.
Yeah.
They're all the age to be Pokemon protagonists. Like,
Point about
that's the
the
point. You could get your first Pokemon, you could get a gun. That's basically
Oh my.
basically Ciconia.
Just American Pokemon, like a wild AR-15 appeared.
I guarantee you that game exists.
Yeah,
Yeah, there is a Pokemon.
there's enough
knockoff.
guns. Like you could actually make a Pokemon game with 151 guns and have like
The Armadex.
plenty for a sequel. Like,
Yeah, I was gonna follow up on Horsefry's point about the difference between like the First World War and the Second World War. It's that these characters don't know about that, or at least the general public doesn't know about that, because B3W
True.
era has been wiped
It's
out, and
true.
Stan will later say, will touch on the fact that it's like, oh, knowledge of wars can lead to wars happening, so that's why they blocked off that knowledge. So they don't even know about civilian like casualties as a.
is that true? Because I think they have referred to the First and Second World War before. Like, it feels like what's been blocked off is the Third
That's
World
100%.
War. Whatever the Third World War
Yeah, that's
was.
what I thought.
Knowledge of that has been blocked off, so they don't know why that started. They don't know who fought, what happened. Like they
No,
know
they
some
have
like
some level of knowledge.
yeah, they have some level of knowledge because it comes up later in this chapter.
This like touches on something that I didn't think was important until now, but they keep calling it B3W, A3W, A2W, but they're never talking about the wars themselves. I think it makes sense if the knowledge of wars themselves was blocked out, but these minor conflicts in between could still remain. So they might.
Oh, okay.
I doubt all knowledge of everything before the Third World War was wiped
Okay,
out,
yeah.
but everything important was probably hidden from them.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, there's a good example right here because there's some narration about how the conflict between AOU Russia and COU China, like it talks about like there was a long history of conflict between those two countries regarding the Amur River, which is a real thing that happened. That was like one of the triggers for the Sino-Soviet split. And there was like a whole lot of fighting, fighting as in like border skirmishes between the Soviet Union and China. And it was interesting because the Soviet Union had like a large stockpile of nukes, and China did not. China had a very small, like they're beginning to stockpile nukes, but Russia was more scared of China than China was of Russia because, or the Soviet Union, I suppose, in those days, because China had a massive army, and they were like, if we get nuked, we're just like our plan is just like total war, like, and it would have been such a huge conflict that the Soviet Union were really worried that China was going to try and escalate the border skirmishes.
God damn, we've been so close to nuclear warfare. Oh my god.
Yeah.
It's so comforting to think about, isn't it?
I love escapist
Yeah,
fantasy.
let's not think about that. Let's keep going.
Funny Ciconia book. This is most likely what the chapter with like the bookend quote is referring to, though, of using
so?
warlike methods to say you're for peace, of like maxing out your army stat with drones that people
Yeah.
can just like. It's like, nah, everyone needs a strong military so that no one will do war. And it's like, okay. And then what Meow and the others are doing, like, right now, is using warlike methods. Using peaceful methods to say you're for war is what they're actually doing. Is that they are not attacking anyone and still being like, yeah, we did the mission. We fought the battle and we won.
Yeah, because they also they support the idea of the wolves of peace, so they are using peaceful methods in not killing people to be pro-war, because they believe the wolves of peace need to be held up. That's really interesting of you mentioning it, that because I didn't think of that, and I have my own interpretations of the quote that I'll get into later.
Okay.
So it's really nice that how many examples of both we do have. So let's keep going. As they fight, in a different corner of his brain, Meow is chatting with Wingji, Rethabil, and Stanislaw, who are also involved in fights in their own little piece of land in the world. Yet despite the multiple conflicts, Meow is coping real hard and decides to call these skirmishes, in fear of admitting this to be World War IV. They are discussing the nature of war. Meow mentions how the Japanese and Chinese keep butting heads over unresolved matters, which was what we were talking about. They keep butting heads over unresolved matters, and they have kept doing that throughout their history. And he blames that on whoever didn't see those conflicts through and didn't actually resolve them once and for all. In his naivete, though, he didn't realize what such a thing would entail, and that prompted Rethabil and Stanislaw to remind him that such a definitive solution that would ensure no one would protest against any previous offense would be total annihilation of the opposing population, in other words, genocide. Genocide in the name of peace, but genocide nonetheless, just like the opening of this chapter. And this was my interpretation. It would be like saying you're pro-war in the sense that these skirmishes must not be absolutely resolved, to say you're pro-peace, because if you didn't leave these skirmishes open and you actually did try to resolve them 100%, the only way to do that is to completely annihilate the enemy. So,
I mean, we all agree that this line of thinking is crazy, right? Like, this whole, like, putting off problems will only result in, like, all-out war. Especially when, like, the Amur River example they gave, like, that ended. That's over. Like, China and Russia are not currently skirmishing over that part of the border.
Yeah.
I mean, they're best friends, actually, but...
It depends on the case, obviously. But yeah, I don't have any concrete examples, but in cases where there is a long history of both countries actually doing unjustified things to each other, I can see that as a matter that will just not be resolved ever. And as I was reading this, I started making parallels with my own experiences with my friends, to where, like, sometimes we argue in my group of friends, but, like, actually trying to resolve the matters will just have us keep arguing for hours. And so we've gotten to the point where sometimes we just don't resolve the matter, and we just wait for time to, like, make us be on good terms again. So then by the next day, we just meet each other and we're just cool again, even though we were almost arguing last night. So in some cases, I can see that as a good thing, because you can just leave it be and just start anew on a new leaf next time.
I guess a contemporary example that comes to mind is, like, Taiwan, right? Like, the best solution for everyone involved at the moment is just to ignore it for as long as possible. Or not ignore it, but, like, just try and put off making any kind of definitive solution, because that'll just be a war at the moment.
I don't know what the situation in Taiwan is.
Oh,
or
China has and always will claim that Taiwan should be part of China, and, like, there's been, like, and, like, Taiwan on the other hand is like soft guaranteed by America. Like, America has this really weird foreign policy where they'll, like, not confirm or deny that they are, like, in a full military alliance with Taiwan, but they will do things like sail a US warship right through the Taiwan Strait, which, if you look on a map, is, like, basically sailing it past the coast of China, you know, just to remind them that we've got some big ships that have got big guns. And they can reach your cities.
Warlike methods to say you're for peace.
Yeah, like, exactly. Like, so I mean, I think like Taiwan's probably a good example where, like, if that never gets resolved, that's probably a good thing, because it means, like, status quo, and the status quo, at least from my perspective, is good. But, like, obviously, it would be nice if, and I hope that it'll be resolved peacefully. And, like, the only way I can imagine that is if China just finally admits that they don't have Taiwan and they don't really need it. It's kind of like a Falklands Islands thing, where it's like, there's just ideological reasons why both sides claim Taiwan. But the people who live in Taiwan, in my opinion, kind of get first say.
In his naivety, Miao realized he was kinda he wasn't suggesting genocide, but he was trying to find a solution that would only actually be realizable through genocide. However, Miao knows all the Gauntlet Knights in the world couldn't beat Sans at the end, so he dejectedly wonders if there's any way to just talk things out. To which Wingji replies that the future generation would just look at such a resolution as a non-resolution, just like Miao just did all those, just like Miao did those of his predecessors a minute ago. Just like he was saying, those old men all those years ago didn't resolve matters. When she's saying that whoever came next would just look at Miao trying to talk things out and say, he didn't actually resolve anything. That's what Wing she's trying to say. This whole conversation makes Miao seem really naive about how the world works, with the other three characters having to keep bringing to light the harsh reality that Miao's wishful thinking isn't accounting for. And yet, disregarding any mold theories, for all their maturity, none of them would have taken any sort of problem-solving action if not for Miao's initiative to form a Chival recorder. Which may be a possible theme here, maybe of cooperation between adults and them younguns. Maybe that's where Ciconia would have gone if Ryukishi would have, decided to keep it going. I think that would be where the story would have gone and maybe ended.
The vibes I get from this part is less that Miao's really naive and everyone else is educating him, and more like actually, it's the spoilers for Umineko. It happens really early, but no, it's spoilers. I won't mention it. It's just a vibe.
Okay, we'll get into it.
It's the part with George, Rosa, and Battler.
Oh no, that's interesting. Let's talk about that.
That's the vibe I get from this, more than that Miao's naive. But
no, I want to get into that. That's interesting. I want you to actually.
We should hold on to that for the spoiler section.
I'll put a pin in it, and we'll come back to it in the spoiler section.
I kind of more get the idea that it's less like talking about how Miao is like. Maybe it is partially talking about how Miao is naive, but I think it's more like kind of the idea that a lot of people look at like those in authority not really doing anything, and they're like, look at these guys, how can they just sit here and like let this happen, the worst, and then they get into like, if they were in that position, like they might find that maybe like the actions they thought they could take wouldn't actually be the best actions to take. And I do wonder how that would be explored, like if they explored it further.
Yeah, exactly, because that was my point. I think the Wing-Ji, Stanislaw, and Reptile are kind of working as proxies for the adults in this situation, because that's basically what's happening here. Is Miao saying, if I had the power, I would have done this, and then the other three are saying, no, but you've done it. If you were to do that, this is what would have happened. So even though they are part of the children group, I think they are, in this chapter at least, they are taking on the role of the adult in the situation. That's the thing that's being explored here, I think.
Yeah.
I'm curious about Miao, and what about his philosophy is going to be like affirmed by the story if there are future phases. What's going to be affirmed and what's going to be like proven to be naive, because Miao does cross into some like scary territory of like, if these two groups have been fighting forever, why doesn't a third party come in and just fix everything? Where I think that Miao definitely does. Honestly, all of the characters, all of the main characters are willing to criticize their own governments and their own higher ups, but they still do have this sort of loyalty. Like one that sticks out is Rethabile, and Rethabile is a member of the royal family, even though she's pretty low on the totem pole. So obviously she'd be biased towards the monarchy. Whereas like Meow is now he's somewhere between a position of not being in power and a position of power, and he's like, oh, I want to fix all of this for these people. And I think that part of it is there's a noble effort to try and help people, but then at points you could cross a line, it becomes arrogance and self-importance. Like, I need to be the one to solve everything because I know what's best. It's weird. So I think Meow's heart is in the right place, and he needs a push in the right direction, but that doesn't necessarily mean that these other three, what are they called, the secondary grandmasters, they're not necessarily 100% correct.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's real... Oh, sorry, go ahead, Yaya.
Sorry. I think that actually brings up an interesting topic of both. I wonder what of Meow's like ideology will be affirmed and denied by the story, but I feel like I would like to know what, because Ryukishi has put a lot of differing viewpoints and philosophies into his novels, and especially Ciconia. And I feel like there's a lot of them that the characters that follow them, like Tojiro, for example, like, are portrayed as, like, being ahead, but their ideologies are not necessarily affirmed by the narrative. Because, I don't know.
Which I think is very important in a story like Ciconia that touches on such dangerous themes.
I feel like...
It's really important to not affirm anything.
Yeah. Like, it is an interesting distinction between whether Ryukishi is having Stanislaw, like, say, like, the thing about genocide because he genuinely, like, agrees with that, or because that is what Stanislaw's, like, character, like, perspective is as someone from his circumstances. Like, because there is, like, a way to think that. I don't think Ryukishi agrees with that necessarily, but because it's not quite backed up.
Like, we can definitely see, like obviously, we have, like, currently, we have ideas about what it takes to maintain peace and what it takes to send the world into war, but, like, those ideas canonically led to World War III. We don't know how or why, but they did. So there's, like, the whole story is, like, hinged on the idea that, like, everything you know is wrong, and here's this new idea that everyone has had after the war, called the Walls of Peace, and all of the philosophy that's attached to that, but it feels weird and wrong to us, so, like, it's kind of interesting.
Is it, like, are the Walls of Peace necessarily something from, like, the A3W era? Because they refer to, like, the powder keg analogy, right? Isn't that something that, like, has existed before? I
mean, I would say it's existed before in the sense that that was the status quo before the First World War. It was the idea that huge military alliances with massive, like, you know, and split evenly would deter war because both sides would be crazy. Like, that's that. Like, I would say the current doctrine on world peace, and it's admittedly a doctrine that's dictated by the United States, is one superpower that has by far the most military, and, like, every other country kind of does what they're told.
And that's NATO now. They're now the world police.
They are, but they haven't. I don't think they've got, like, they're not the America in this situation. They're like,
well, they're compared to America in the tips.
I'd say they're like, I guess Germany I don't think any country pre-World War One really applies. Maybe America pre-World War One, if America was, like, maybe a bit closer to what it was before the Second World War, like a lot more industrialized. They're a third party. They're not massively more powerful than any of the great powers, but they are more powerful than any one great power.
They're not massively more powerful that we know of.
That's true. But, I mean, that's the important thing, right?
I feel like there's a lot of, like, stuff with Leto that we don't know about because Phase 1.
Oh, for sure. There's some shady-ass shit. But I guess that's the important thing when it comes to their philosophy, right? Like, the people in Order of the Public Bath, they would all agree that, like, yeah, Leto's the most powerful, probably the most wealthy, the most industrialized, but not by a whole lot. Like, I feel like if two of the other factions teamed up on them, then it would go the other way.
Yeah, I think that would probably that would probably be their consensus.
Yeah, earlier you were having a discussion about authorial intent, and I just wanted to butt in to say that all throughout this chapter, and now with the knowledge that Ryukishi probably almost definitely won't be continuing Ciconia, I was trying real hard to try to understand what the actual major theme of the story could possibly be, and how the story was supposed to end, which is really hard with his stories, because if you think about Higurashi and Umineko, it's even into the answer arcs, he's still adding up to his themes, and you can't exactly. It's really hard to predict where he's trying to go with this story, but it's really interesting to try to understand what could possibly be the end goal of Ciconia here, because it can't be this simple. You know, there's got to be some meta shit going on. There's gonna be a massive amount of plot twists to come, and I feel like we haven't even touched upon half of the themes that would have come in phase 2, and then in phase 3 he would start making those steps to actually conclude the story in phase 4. I think in phase 1 we don't even have the whole development of the story yet. I bet we're missing half the story in terms of themes, but it's still interesting to try to piece things together and think as he would have thought.
And then there's also like the super secret like leveled up like theory of Ryukishi saying Ciconia is going to be 4 phases. Did that mean When They Cry 5 would be 4 phases, and then there would be Ciconia answer arcs that would be 4 more phases?
Oh, wow.
Which would be insane. I do think there were only planned to be 4 phases of Ciconia, but
yeah, because I think he said that in the context of Ciconia is going to be shorter. If I remember correctly, so that I think that's why I've always assumed it would have been 2 chapters of question arcs into chapters of answer arcs.
Yeah, I think that's what most people assume, and I think that's correct. But
yeah, kind of ironic that the thing that was supposed to be shorter ended up taking the longest time to actually kind of conclude, I guess.
Stay tuned till the end, and we'll talk about this announcement about Ciconia.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't know about it, basically there was an interview. Ryukishi basically confirmed he won't be continuing Ciconia, but we'll get into that after we cover everything we've got to cover. So stay tuned.
Honestly, Des, I don't think that's the full story, but that's why we got to talk about a little bit now and just tease them so that they stick around and get what's going on here.
Exactly.
I wanted to pivot just a little bit. Horse Riding.
I was going to say this is going to be very funny in the sense of like we have an entire episode that's going to come out before, so there's going to be the announcement. There's going to be a whole episode where we just don't talk about it, and we say, "I wonder when Ciconia Phase 2 is going to come out," and then there'll be this episode.
Guys, Phase 2.
Can't wait for everyone in the comments being like, "Do they know? Do they know?
Yeah.
Do they know?
Do they know?"
I think the only solution is we need to release these episodes concurrently, just one after the other.
We could do that, but like I feel like it'd be better to space them out a little bit. I feel like that's not like. I feel like we get the first "Do they know?" comment, and they could just like, yes, we know.
Step 1, though, making sure that this episode is a reasonable length to edit. So I'm gonna pivot. I'm going to pivot because we were talking about authorial intent, and that talks about something else that I'm wondering what the end of the story will have untold. This is what I spoil Horse Fry on that I'm going to talk about.
What?
So I said, question. Between believing that all these sprouts of war are the cause of conspiracy and believing that the sprouts are disconnected disputes all popping up at the same time by coincidence, which is more naive and which is more accurate to the truth of Ciconia? Because I remember there's a part around here where Meow says, "Oh, it'd be cool if there was one big enemy that we could just go take down."
I mean,
and that might be the 3 kings. Are they even real?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Looking at it through authorial intent, if I was writing Ciconia, even though like the most predictable answer is for it is a conspiracy, even though that's the most predictable answer, I think having it just be a coincidence would be too boring. So I think my preferred outcome and what I think Ryukishi was getting into is, yes, it's almost conspiracy, but there's another layer to this that you don't know about yet.
I feel like as a story about war, it's more impactful if there is no conspiracy.
Yeah, for sure.
And I feel like that is what Ryukishi would probably do, as it's been a while since he's, like, written, like, a When They Cry, and I feel like I don't know. But, that said...
This conversation would really benefit from being in the spoiler section, I think. Because there's a very...
I was just thinking that.
And also the next bit of the summary also will help us make these points.
Okay, so in the end, the four of them reach the conclusion that there will always be conflict. You can't end it, but you can strive to pluck the seeds of conflict so that aggressions don't escalate beyond control. Going back to the quote, this example seems to be a bit more grey. So I wanted to ask you, do you think this is using peaceful means to be pro-war, or do you think that admitting that there will always be conflict, so it's better to just trying to keep things cool so it doesn't escalate further, is actually just using warlike means to be pro-peace? What do you think this is?
I think it's the latter. I wouldn't say the former is like propaganda, right? Like you use peaceful, quote unquote peaceful means, but you go like the enemy are evil. They eat children and you want to blow up your farms, and I don't know, all of that stuff is like peaceful means because you're not killing anyone. Like again, like this would really benefit from the next bit of the next section of summary, but like the whole idea of being like, I'm for peace and I'll kill anybody who doesn't agree with me. Like there's a very clear foolishness that comes up with yeah. And then on the other hand, you have I'm doing my part kind of jingoism that's like peaceful, but like it's only leading one way, and it's not towards peace.
I think that it's naive to believe that wars can be ended just like that. But I think one of the important themes of Ciconia will be the amount of work that goes into peace. You can't just refuse orders a few times and expect to be done with it. I think it requires a lot more people and a lot more action and a lot more sticking with peace, not just trying to compromise with warlike means and like, oh, we'll fight in these battles, we'll obey your orders. No, I think that probably one of the end Ciconia will involve what does it mean to like really try to end these wars, and it's probably going to come down to protest and like working with the people, because stopping to fight, I believe this is off the top of my head so I don't know for sure, but one of the early things about Ciconia was that they were talking down about people who stopped fighting just because they were pro-peace, and I feel like that's going to come up again, and that if they really want to be for peace, they got to just stop fighting.
Yeah, and you bringing up protests that got me into thinking, because as we know, there's this whole world building thing in Ciconia. You got the virtual world, you got the factory, and obviously at first you'd assume the end game of Ciconia would have something to do with some higher power that would actually enable them to turn the tables around. But then, since war is such a real thing for us who are reading this visual novel, it would be kind of, I don't know, weird for the solution to war to be... Because like stories usually want to convey a message, so it would be weird for the message of Ciconia to be, oh yeah, the answer to stopping war is this thing that only exists in this story, not in the real world. Good work, reader. So yeah, I do. You mentioned it, and it does make sense that the answer he would be going for that would actually conclude the story, the answer to war would have to be something real and achievable for us, like protesting.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, the solution to stopping this war needs to be something I think if he found a solution to stop all wars, he'd probably have to get a Nobel Prize for that. And
No, he would have ended up in the lab if he did.
yeah, I somehow doubt that's what he's got cooking. So it probably is like something very straightforward.
I feel like if our guy had the solution to all wars cooking, he would not be like, I should not release this at this current juncture.
No, that's exactly why he's not going to release it. He's like, I can't spoil them the solution. You need to figure it out yourself. You can't ever stop thinking. Never stop thinking.
It's a mystery novel.
The mystery is 75% of the story.
Yeah.
If I tell them how to end all wars, it'll be too easy. It won't be good for them.
Yeah.
Is this using peaceful methods to be pro-war?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Anyway, speaking of using violent methods to be pro-peace, a new example of that just dropped. Because the four start discussing videos of news of pro-peace groups being violent. And they are saddened by the fact that they can't express pro-peace views publicly in fear of being associated with such groups. The chat is then interrupted by Keropoyo announcing some breaking news.
Wait, should we move around? Should we move away from this so fast though? Because we're about to move into Herbal L5, but there's still the fact that these videos, they are very suspicious.
Yeah.
They are.
Okay.
Massively.
I think we're still covering that.
Yeah, anyone can be violent. Even people who are pro-peace can be violent, but these videos are, there's no way they're not made up propaganda. There's literally a quote in there, like words of Tojiro, where his weird bullshit philosophy comes back, where he's like, oh, these are all, what does he say? Decoys. They're decoys, meow. I'm pretty sure that this is propaganda that's being put out there to make people too afraid to say that they're for peace.
Yeah.
Because they think that this is what people will think of them, and this is what people will think of them. It's yeah.
I think this is a massive puzzle piece. Is this propaganda? Like I was gonna say, this doesn't have to be like AI generated or anything. Like all you have to do is like film this protest, and like how they say, like there's this kid who makes a rude hand gesture, and then everyone goes and beats him up because he's not peaceful enough. It's like all you have to do is film that, not film the part where he pulls out a gun and like points it at the crowd, and then film the part where the crowd beats him up, and then you've got your narrative. Like this is real life stuff that people do. Like yeah.
Pokey, the wording you used has made me have a mental breakdown as you were discussing that, because you said Tojiro would be like, yo, meow, these are decoys, look, decoys. And the way you say that, it just, in my mind, I just imagine Tojiro using one of those lasers to tease a cat, because he just attacked the laser. And then it just all kept piecing together, like meow, onomatopoeia for the sound that cats make. Tojiro is always taking photos of meow, and cat videos on the internet are just the biggest fucking thing ever. So
this is also a piece of the puzzle.
I didn't pay attention to anything you just said, because this is what was happening in my mind as you were discussing.
It was a decoy, Tess. You've fallen into the classic blunder.
No.
I won't go over this again, because I'm on record, I think, on multiple episodes of this about how like skeptical I am about this like grand plan for like forcing the entire country to go like. But this is not the whole story. Like this is like a very small like side gig on the whole get a country mobilized for war thing. Like this wouldn't work. That's my claim. This like using this as your sole strategy is not going to work. It needs to be backed up with massive propaganda, and the propaganda is way more relevant than like a few like you can see later on, right, when and this is getting into the herbal level 5, so maybe I should wait. But like everyone in the Order of the Public Bath, even though they all agree that war is bad and they should avoid it at all costs, like all of them are still thinking in terms of the strategic like things of their nation. Like they still think in terms of like oh yeah, well, like, establishing this base on the Glass Sea is plucking a sprout of war, and like the other side's like, well, no, actually, not doing that is plucking the sprout of war. Like destroying it is plucking the sprout of war. Like there's still certain things where everyone disagrees. They're like, no, my country's right, which is very like real life, because that's how propaganda works. That's how information works.
Yeah, I think one thing though is that you didn't finish the sentence, so I won't judge you for it. But you said something like a few, and like I feel like part of this propaganda, and I think there's a lot of propaganda in this story that's being fed. This is just a part of it, but it's that it's trying to undermine people who are pro peace, and like it's trying to silence the people who are really pro peace by showing them these videos of these nobodies, these people who don't even deserve to count, that like thinking that this is a real video and that this is what people who are pro peace are really like. I think that it's bigger. They're trying to make pro peace people look small to make pro war look like the good option.
Yeah, I get that. Like, I'm sure it has some effect.
Yes.
I would say, like, in terms of the effect, like, this happens in real life. It absolutely happens in real life. But the effect is more to do with, like, undermining the people who are already there and already have a point, right? Like, I would say the real-world analog for this isn't necessarily, like, the government fabricating an entire resistance movement so that they can undermine them. It's more like they take one that's already there. Like, they take Black Lives Matter and they undermine it by specifically only showing information that's suitable for them, for their like narrative.
Right.
So they can say, look, they're really violent, and they're huge hypocrites because they say they're for equality and peace, but look, this one person attacked this other person. Like, yeah, like I think that's more the idea. Like Tojiro's like unhinged rounds about how like all you have to do is make up a straw man and everyone will go, well, that straw man's bad, so I'm going this way, is kind of, I call that naive, but it's...
Yeah, I don't think, like we aren't seeing his full intentions yet. Everything he does, it's not for the reason it seems he's doing that. He may be trying to provoke a war, but maybe his end goal isn't for there to be a war. It's for like Meow to feel angry about the fact that there's a war and then act. Yeah. Something like that. Anyway, should I keep going? Get into Erebil?
Yeah.
The funny L5.
I think that's alright.
The chat is interrupting by Keropoyo announcing some breaking news. Cases of Erebil L5 have just been diagnosed and certified by Leto. Erebil L5 is a weaponized biohazard virus that a country that would later join the ABN created in the B3W era and supposedly destroyed. Except it's popping up again, and it targets crops, and it has been reported in countries that neighbor the ABN, yet the ABN territory is suspiciously unaffected. The groups once... sorry. The groups once... What the fuck? This grammar is all wrong. Anyway, the four of them, Rethabil, Meow, Stanishdale, and Rethabil, they were once having a stable conversation, but now that these news have reached them, they are thrown off balance. Rethabil starts feeling vengeful and low-key suggesting she shouldn't stand by after her territory has been attacked. And Stan tries to defuse the situation, assuring her that the ABN will provide compensation to the affected regions, but he worries that that compensation will do little to quell public opinion. Trying to focus everyone's attention, Wing-Ji brings up that the true enemy is whoever enriched the virus this time, but this attempt at regaining order in the group only served to remind everyone of the limits of their powers, as they are simply weapons, and not detectives to go figure out who the real enemy is. And I think these chapters provide a really good insight into how the story of Ciconia would progress, as I've already said, because it's not just the themes of adults and children, it's also the themes of cooperation. And you know, it really highlights the limit of what Meow's course of action, is, because he did form the order, but all they are just they're just blades. They don't have an information network. They don't have connections. They don't have knowledge. And like they just don't have security even, because it was brought up some chapters ago that anyone, and it will be brought up in this chapter again, that anyone could be listening to what they're doing, and what they're doing is very illegal. So yeah, and I also think these chapters really do a lot to, I don't know, humanize Rethabille's character, because she's always the one in these chapters to break down a little, in the sense that she starts not, she never actually does it, but she starts undervaluing the policies of the order. She obviously she still believes she should follow them, but you catch little glimpses of humanity, like here, where she unintentionally and understandably so got angry over the fact that her territory was attacked, and Stan had to calm her down and be like, yo, don't worry, the AVN surely will compensate the affected regions for it. And she does calm down, but she can't help herself but feel a little bit hysterical about it, because it is a really big attack, and it is kind of very worrisome.
This is what I was saying.
So,
this is what I was saying about how everyone in the public bath does still seem to be thinking in terms of their of their country's way of thinking. No matter how much they agree that war sucks and we should avoid a war at all costs, they're also all thinking man, we should go and destroy civilian infrastructure because circumstantially it looks like that's what the ABN did. And you got this line from Rethabille where she's if I think it's right to destroy to carry out the attack on the agricultural plant, no one has a right to complain, right? Because that's the rules. And that kind of shows, I think, where the whole order of the public bath is going to fall apart, and does fall apart. Which is at the end of the day, most people in the public bath are going to agree with their orders more often than would be ideal. You kind of need to make people make decisions against the interests of their own country if this is going to work, which is really dangerous, and probably would cause the public bath to disband. But that's just the only way it'll work.
But I'm glad we have a character like that in the order, because both Stan and Wingji are super fucking stoic.
Yeah.
And Miao, up until this point, seemed to be the only one who actually has any form of personality. So I'm glad Rethabille got a little bit more of characterization here.
I will say Lingji gets a little bit as well. Lingji is also very, very invested and emotionally invested in some of the stuff that happens. But she has some.
Maybe I didn't pay as much attention.
I want to say she has some scenes later on, but right now the COU isn't really involved as much, and it's the ABN and the ACR. So that's why we've got the conflict between Stanislav and Rethabille.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, well, the group then arcs back to practical examples in a struggle to try to understand what each faction of the Gauntlet might not try to piece together and understand what they should do on the battlefield if they are deployed. And they try to figure out what Rethabille is supposed to do if, they tell her to go kill some plants over at the ABN. Rethabille argues plants aren't people, so it should be fine, right? And then Wingji reminds her that the ABN would just take that as an attack, since they may be being framed. And Rethabille lashes back at her for assuming she didn't know that. Rethabille just believes that doing nothing will only lead to bottled up emotions and make everything worse in the end.
She's probably right.
Yeah, she is probably right. Communications between the four are breaking down in this microcosmos of the public opinion circulating the globe, and that's making it hard to decide how to act in light of the policies of the Order. In the end, their faith in the Order starts wavering, and they don't want to admit it. But all the hope fueled by the aftermath party of the Battle Standards Festival is fading away as time goes by. All of this might have been nothing more than wishful thinking. Miao then brings up the idea of recruiting an intelligence agency, but the other three immediately shut that down, as the mere concept of the order is very illegal, and those agencies tend to really uphold justice.
Just the idea that of like Meow like approaching a CIA agent being like, hey, you want to join our secret treason organization? Just it gives me absolute chills. I'm so glad they shut that the fuck down. Like that, you want to talk about like Meow being naive? Like, yeah, okay, that one I'll give you. That's free.
I don't think Meow would have been that naive. I think he's your usual when they cry protagonist. He speaks first, and only after speaking does he think about what he's saying.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, he's just brainstorming out loud. And yeah, I don't think he would have gone up to CIA agent and being like, yo, wanna defect? I think he would have probably talked with Leto's sisters, maybe, or his father.
Honestly, I think his father is a worse choice.
Yeah.
And I think that's absolutely what he would have done if they didn't shut him down.
I think the Leto sisters are a worse choice.
Yeah. There are three bad options that he's already proven he thinks he can trust.
Yeah. I mean,
and I'm not so sure.
Admittedly, like the whole idea of the public bath is like dreadfully insecure. Like,
yeah,
there's like
he just gathered a bunch of people, and it's not just the characters with sprites. There's like supposedly a whole bunch of
like
spriteless gauntlet knights. So like.
Yeah.
There's gotta be information breach when you reach that amount of people.
Yeah, for sure.
Be it intentional or unintentional. Anyway, it's such a shaky idea that Rethabil even states that if Meow does go forward with that plan, she will be forced to reluctantly disband the ACR branch of the Order. The other three tell Meow he has done enough, and reaching this point is already a miracle. So he really doesn't need to try to go further and put everything he's built at risk. He dejectedly comes to the realization that despite all his efforts, he's still a piece in someone else's chessboard. He's feeling down and not being able to do more. What? No, he's feeling down about not being able to do more, but the other three attempt to make him see it the other way around and be happy that he even made it this far in the first place. Having regained a somewhat calm resolution to the discussion, Rethabil leaves the chat, informing the others that the ACR did end up issuing the order for Rethabil's squad to go kill some plants, and she will do her best to comply with the order's policies. But yeah,
it is really interesting. There's no discussion among the group about like the distinction between like military military assets and civilian assets. Like I feel like in real life that probably would come up at least once, but it's not too unrealistic that I mean, we're talking about like, you know, less than 100 years ago, strategic bombing and was how the Second World War was practically won. Like was, you know, just, and like, you know, the British were like big on night bombing, which is very inaccurate. And then the Americans were like, oh, well, we have a day bombing doctrine. We only bomb during the day so we can be precision bombers. And then they went like, oh, hey, if we drop napalm on Tokyo, it'll set the entire city on fire. And they're like, okay, well, let's do that. Like, anyway, where I'm going with this is like, you know, it's realistic that countries will target each other's civilian infrastructure, and we can see it in Ukraine. That's what Russia is doing. Yeah, it's just interesting that no one brings that up as a point of like maybe that's where we can draw a line between the sprouts of war and the.
No, I think they didn't bring that up because even I don't think Rethabil is considering attacking public infrastructures. I think. What she's implying here is that she'll try her best not to damage ABNS. No, that's not right. I was gonna say she's gonna try her best not to damage ABN assets, but if push comes to shove, she will have to kill flowers. But the policies of the order are just that you don't kill people; you do attack everything else.
Like if you did this in real life, if you target a grain silo, the thing that follows is like worldwide food shortages. You know,
yes.
like
people will die
if
she attacks the food storage.
And a food storage, like it doesn't it's strategically important to the country, but it isn't tactically important to the country. So they can't use that agricultural facility as a pad to stage a missile attack into your country. But if you destroy it, they will eventually starve to death, and then you can win the war. Like, that's the difference. And I think generally people will, draw a line somewhere and say, hey, that's probably not fair to target civilian infrastructure. Except if you're in a war, and then when you're in a war, people get a bit more flexible about their morals. But
yeah. And also, I think it does come up later in the story that, this is just a terrible idea on all sides, just to quell public opinion. Because most of the other countries are also going to start going through a famine because of the Herbal L5. And by attacking the only unaffected country's food storage, they're just making it worse for everyone.
Yeah.
And Rethabel's just
I guess.
But my country, though.
Yeah.
But I'm going to do it.
But vengeance.
But vengeance.
Well, especially when we don't actually know that it's the ABN looks sus as fuck, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was them.
Framed.
But they could have very easily been framed. Yeah.
You just have to have some inside men in their food production, give them something to be more resistant to the virus.
Yeah. Well, they do say in the thing it's quite likely that even if they didn't continue researching it, they had a feeling it would come back, and so they took measures to ensure that their crops were disease resistant, which makes a lot of sense, and maybe that just worked.
Yeah, it's not even necessarily maliciously they were resistant. It's just we have food, it was just in case. It's
yeah,
you got the flu and the flu came back, that's suspicious.
Yeah.
Stan objected to the idea that I think the crops were prepared in case Herbal L5 came back. But I don't think it's that unreasonable of a thing to do, to prepare for...
I think that's actually quite fair,
something.
yeah. Yeah. Also, I think this is one of the... This plot beat is one of the reasons I don't think it's too unreasonable for Ryukishi to have delayed Phase 2 because of COVID. Because, this... COVID was the time of microchips and 5G towers and, a lot of very unreasonable conspiracy theories that, if you put out a book about how a virus was, a government conspiracy to frame another country so that the world would go to world war, that just seems to feed a little bit too much into, some of the, insanity that was going around.
I do hope one day everything will have calmed down enough for Ryukishi to be I think now I can do it. I think now I can release a fictional book about a fictional disease made by another nation conspiratorially to push towards war.
Yeah.
Well, to conclude the story summary, one by one everyone leaves and the chapter ends. It was which we only have one sentence left.
Oh, cool. Can I go over the quote?
The next quote.
Yeah.
Okay,
we'll talk about it again at the start of next time, so we could talk about it when it's relevant again.
Mm-hmm.
So it ends with the two quotes, actually. First quote by Otto von Bismarck. Only a fool learns from his own mistakes. The wise man learns from the mistakes of others.
Okay.
Second quote. Oh, after you?
I think Des gets the quote.
The second
What?
quote is only a
What do
fool
you mean?
learns from his own
No.
No, you're not over
Bring
it?
that back. What the fuck do you mean?
Hold on.
You seem confused, so I wanted to explain it better, but I think you got it. So
Okay. I thought you were saying I was the fool who
I'm
did
not
it.
being I think Des knows about learning from other people's mistakes quite well.
Right.
Alright, well, the second quote after Otto's is only a fool learns from his own mistakes, but the biggest fools learn from the internet. That is quoted from Nonsense from the Internet.
Whoa. It's like the liar's paradox. It's should I learn from that or should I not learn from that? Because it's from the internet. Fuck.
Yeah. You should never trust everything you read on the internet. By Abraham Lincoln.
I think that second quote is probably very relevant to what I was saying about propaganda and trusting everything that people say. And like, I think that the first quote about only a fool learns from his own mistakes, the wise man learns from the mistakes of others, that's a little bit difficult for me to crack. I guess it's learn from the past or you're doomed to repeat it.
Yeah.
By like paying attention to the world and like the actions of humans and like their failings especially, like you can make sure that you never make those kinds of mistakes is kind of like the ideal of that, of like the ideal version of that phrase.
Yeah, because I do think it's kind of edgy how they put it, like, oh, the fool learns from his own mistakes.
No,
like, shut the fuck
that's
up,
Otto von Bismarck, who I think was a German politician and diplomat, or maybe he was just a politician who did diplomatic things. I had the tab, but
what a cringe
he
word.
basically he unified Germany, and then he handed the reins over, and then they'd gone to the First World War.
So
Yeah.
I think that on first glance, these quotes have opposite meanings. One is saying learn from others. The other is saying, hey, don't trust what you read on the internet. But they're not necessarily mutually exclusive.
I wanted to say that, like, those two quotes together. I'm gonna wave this for the full when they Christ power part.
Okay.
Okay. I think it's like oddly lighthearted, so maybe it just might be like it might just be a little bit of comic relief after a very tense scene.
Yeah.
I can see that.
But I also don't trust Ryuki. She just be like, here's a joke, and I'm like, is it a joke?
Yeah.
Last time we had a joke, we had spoils the whole plot of Umineko.
Yeah.
It's the one part you think is skippable in Umineko episode 1.
Yep.
Yeah. It is interesting.
Man.
It is interesting that the first quote is like probably quite prescient for like someone who I think he died before World War One. Sorry. So like him saying that is quite, I guess, prescient because the world's about to go into like a massive war. And like the same, like what I was saying about like how the AOU, ACR, ABN, COU, all that stuff reminds me a lot of like pre-First World War alliance system, the Entente and the Central Powers, and their philosophy of like both sides just need to be powerful enough to scare the other side and be equally scary, which like didn't work.
Kind of this powder keg.
A powder keg, yeah.
Yeah. So, should we get into full when they cry spoilers?
I have two things I want to talk about in non-spoilers first.
Okay, go ahead.
So, the first one is a running theme for every episode of Data Archive that I'm on, which is Kirapoyo is sus as fuck. Oh my god. Like,
It's true.
I think that's just
it's true.
I think that's just a product of Kirapoyo always being sus, so just the fact that he pops up in every chapter.
Like, how dystopian is it that you're in a chat room just chatting with people, and Kirapoyo, without asking anybody or like getting any permissions, just comes in and goes, "Hey, here's a news article that I have chosen specifically for you." Like that.
Yeah. I wonder if they all got the same one or not.
He's a cute frog, which is I think is like it's the smoke screen for like government propaganda. It may not even be government. It might be there is a secret conspiracy and they're trying to push the world into war. And it turns out that what everyone has in common, which leads into my second point, is that they have installed Kizuna on their cell comms because it's the one that's like free and like technically the government doesn't have like control over it. Supposedly, that's what Kizuna says. And everyone in the world can use it, so they can be interconnected. But like
that would really, really play into the double meaning of Kizuna.
Yeah.
There was also an anime called Kizuna, and they also did this. So I'm pretty sure these are the two meanings of Kizuna. It can both mean bond, but also wound.
Oh.
So
Bond and wounds?
Kizuna is the bond that bonds the world together, but it's also the wound. It's also what will make everyone go to war if it is the conspiracy of spying on people.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
I didn't know about that definition of Kizuna, but I already thought it was a double meaning because bond as in like you're bound and bond as in you're connected.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because like the thing the anime does is there's also this system called the Kizuna system, where the people bonded by the Kizuna system always all suffer the same pain. So if I hit my little
Step on a
finger,
Lego, everyone dies.
everyone feels the pain from the Lego. So it's a dystopian way of
Jeez.
bonding everyone, where if everyone in the world suffered the same pain, you wouldn't go out of your way to hurt someone.
I was just gonna say, this is Kisniver, right? The anime.
Yeah, Kizunaiva. It has a banger opening.
There's one particular exchange which is after like Kirapoyo comes in and goes, "Hey, here's a news article," and then like they have this whole thing where like they're discussing it, and Meow comes out and goes like, "Hey, Rethabil, don't sus Stanislav. He's done nothing." And she's like, "Oh, I don't sus him. I just think that's what people will think. That they'll think he's sus." And then like in amongst this conversation, like Kirapoyo goes like, "Oh yeah, I'll grab you some like voice lines from people who have been affected by the biohazard," and he just starts like pumping in more propaganda
Wow.
without anybody asking.
Wow.
Like, especially like in a part where like they're trying to like go like, "Hey, let's not tear each other apart. Let's all bring each other together and focus on the goals of the order." And Kirapoyo's like, "Oh, you want more petrol? I've got more petrol," and like starts pouring it on the fire.
I don't know. I think it could work. It's just
think-
AI. It's like ChatGPT.
It is like ChatGPT, yeah. It's very prescient.
Okay, but like Meow's Karapoyo is also specifically different though. Like because
Is it?
I think so, because there's some weird words with like blue meow or
Yeah,
racer
there's-
meow or dabba dabba da or
That's
whatever
true.
you want to call them. I remember that Karaboyo has like a really specific reaction after that. I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's something weird and it's something sus, and it stuck out in my mind. I could try and find it at some point, but
like
I don't remember what my point was with this.
yeah, I remember he said yeah. I don't remember what it was, but I get the vibes of what you mean. I do remember the vibes of something like that, where he's like seems like he's different from the other Kirapoyos somehow.
Also, speaking of things being different between different people, I do wonder if they all got and read the same article.
Oh,
Or if they all got like
Oh my
different,
God.
like tailored propaganda for their
Fucking
country. Like,
holy shit! That is actually
which would be crazy.
that is an incredible point. And wouldn't it be great if like there's four what's it called? 4 phases, and phase 2, like the same thing happens, but like it's from Lingji's perspective, and Lingji gets a different article. That would be so cool.
That would have been so cool.
The first non-whoop whoop story in Ryukishi's hands.
Yeah.
That actually would be crazy, but I'd prefer it was still loops, but that would be crazy.
That would actually be so. Because no, wait, that I think taking into account Higurashi and Umineko, I think Ciconia is the only story where that could actually work, because
Yeah.
he would want to lead the audience to think these are actual loops, so he'd have to show
Yeah.
the same event but happening differently,
Yeah.
and he could do that throughout with the virtual world, because as you said, he would just be showing the same event but extremely completely different to another person.
Oh
I
man.
just really like the idea that, like, in phase 4, or like phase 3, we would be the POV character would be one of the spies, and then like phase 4 would just be Gunhild, and it just continues. Or so, because I feel like Gunhild is just the secret protagonist.
My
Like, I
bet's
don't know.
on
It's just the vibe she gives.
Koshka and
Kushka's
Lilia.
also a very good bet. I don't know about Lilia, but I think it's between Kushka and Gunhild. But with like the data fragment like 16 or 15 or whichever it is, that is just very much the vibes that she gives off, for me at least.
So
I had.
oh,
Sorry.
So I was just gonna say, because I was kind of leading into the second thing, which I touched on, which is like they do have a section that, like close to the end, where they talk about how the Cellcom, like not how it works, but how it has changed. Like, so they talk about how the government has been trying to clamp down on cellcoms and like regulate it in some way and like bring it under like government control, and generally the ways people use to circumnavigate that have stayed one step ahead. So I just thought that was really interesting, in the sense that, like, you know, the whole story, everyone just kind of takes it for granted that they can think whatever thoughts they want and like no one's listening in. But like you know, they talk about there's a company called Kizuna that they promise their motto is do no evil, you know, like, but that's just the promise, like, as we know. And also the fact that like the government is actively trying to get their claws on this, you know, and like it only takes one, you know, little outage where the government's like, oh, we finally found an inn, and they get like 1 day's worth of like access, and they'll blow this thing wide open, like.
For sure.
So yeah, just those two things I thought were interesting foreshadowing, I suppose, and world building.
I had two things. You reminded me of one of them. Of later on when like they kind of wisen up to the Gauntlet Knight, the Order of the Public Baths, like don't die and don't kill, like, strategy. I like the idea, kind of, that with all the people in the Order and all of like the potential like data leaks that there could be, that like the tops of all the world nations like kind of just are in on it, and they're like, actually this is very convenient, so let's just keep that on the down low for now. And like when it becomes more obvious and they can't deny it, they're like, okay, well, it was useful while it lasted, but we have to start cracking down on it. And I would not be surprised at all.
That's exactly what Tojiro. That's what Tojiro does with all his orders, besides the main one, like the top one he has with the Egyptian motherfucker. I don't remember her name.
Yeah, the Ninth Prime.
Yeah, because that's exactly what he does with his other orders. Like, the people in the orders believe they're the actual masterminds, and they're just exchanging information, but actually what they're doing is providing Tojiro with information that he uses elsewhere.
And then the other thing should actually be saved for the spoiler section, because we had something to talk about with the conspiracy, or lack thereof.
I do think that if we're going to talk about Ciconia being cancelled, it should be before the spoilers, so as not to alienate. Yeah.
Right. No, you're correct.
That's true.
You're correct.
Yeah.
That is the greatest save that you could have possibly had.
That's fair, yeah.
You just press the bomb button before you die.
Yeah, let's talk about that. That's very important.
Yeah, it's from Rena Toshoka. It's like the regular Twitter account that translates shit. And one of the things Ryukishi said in this is, on Ciconia, right now, with all the bad things happening in the world, Ryukishi isn't sure that it's a good time to write about such themes as an entertainment. He's still searching for the answer inside himself. It's probably too early to return to it, so he will be focusing on other things as a writer for a time being. He is even thinking about maybe making another When They Cry, or some other unrelated to Kikoni's story while it is on pause. Oh shit, keyword, on pause. Not really.
Yeah.
Plans about Ciconia being a 4-part story are unchanged.
Okay.
So do we think it's actually a pause? Or is it just... Is Ciconia as on pause as the fucking... I don't know, dialogue? That's never being resumed. I'm sorry for any dialogue fans.
No.
The problem with Dean Log is there's too many wars going on right now. Just like as soon as the wars end, we can resume Dean Log.
I think that it's not over, but it's not. It is a pause, but that doesn't mean it will necessarily be resumed again. I think that it's not a total cancellation, but right now it sounds like there are no plans to resume yet.
Yeah, that's kind of the way it sounds to me. But I think that this is a story that Ryukishi really does want to write, and so I think that he will, like, continue looking out for when he thinks the time is right. And so I think it is not really. It is up to him. Not like the world would not descend into chaos if he released Phase 2 tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, but I understand in terms of like respect and not using such heavy topics in the world today as entertainment. That it may not be the right time in terms of like sensitivity.
Yeah, I mean, for all the jokes we make about Ciconia Face never coming out, like obviously, the decision is up to Ryukishi. It's his story, and any comments on his decisions we make, obviously, are not like are not meant to like make him feel bad about it. It's just commentary on his judgment from fans who like what he does. So, respectively, Ryukishi, words already existed
Yeah.
when you released Phase 1.
Yeah.
Even so, I respect your decision, and it's up to you. And I'm just saddened. And as opposed to, I have a much more pessimistic outlook on it. I think it's going to be the kind of thing where 20 years from now, he's going to be like, okay, I initially put it on hold because I thought I would have gone back to it, but I don't think I'm ever going back to it. It's been too long. I no longer like where I was going with the story, so I'm going to just drop it.
I feel like he will
I
finish
could
it.
think that would happen,
But-
but yeah, go on.
Yeah. Well, I was just say like, I've always felt like, and I admit there's not really a lot of evidence in terms of things he's said to reflect this, but I've always felt like the thing Ryukishi is being influenced by in terms of current events is to do with the story direction and his themes. I think he is the kind of guy who takes in new information and like wants to have themes that are really resonant with the real world. And I don't know, there's a lot of stuff that like, you know, that I've discussed in the data archives where I'm like, I'm really hopeful that the like Phase 2 and onwards will start to address some of these things, because there are things in here that I think are kind of strange takes if you take them at face value, which is like not something I usually do with Ryukishi, but he hasn't released any other phases, so
Yeah.
like I there's no evidence for it, but I still feel like, and this latest release is kind of more of what he's always said, but I feel like it's kind of an excuse, and what he really wants is time to think, and there's no real like timeline for how long it takes to think about things that are happening in the real world and come up with opinions, like, you know, so one thing I definitely think is like Ciconia Phase 1 has like a very like, I don't know, like war is always bad kind of vibe, and like one of the dangers, you can still do it, you're threading a needle, but you can still do it. One of the dangers is you go full Neville Chamberlain, and it's like war should be avoided at all costs. You should use any political means available, including selling other countries down the river, including, you know, giving aggressors everything they want, and we know that just doesn't work. And like, if you're releasing this this visual novel in an environment where the Afghanistan war is still going on, like the occupation is still going on, that doesn't challenge that, like that kind of theming, that kind of viewpoint. But something like the Ukraine war does, where it's like, you know, if you talk, like when people talk about peace in terms of the Ukraine war, you have to kind of analyze what do you mean by that, because half the time they're saying Ukraine should give up territory and people to Russia, which, like, I don't know, I personally disagree with. I believe in I believe Ukraine should have the right, as long as they're given the bloody guns they need to fight as long as they want to, and that's my take on it. So like, I feel like the Ukraine war directly challenges potentially what the theme of Ciconia could have been. But like, a lot of this is based on, like, I don't know what the themes of Ciconia are, and I guess it comes back to what Pokey said, which is like, you know, it really matters whether this is a story about a massive government conspiracy or a story about, you know, what people read into as conspiracies but are really political strategy and that kind of thing. So
Yeah, I feel like there's a level of Ryukishi. I guess I'll put it harshly to play devil's advocate. Ryukishi has made his bed and now he has to lie in it, where he's made a story about the future and about war, and he's got to figure out. He's kind of chosen an ambitious topic to talk about. It almost feels like Ciconia is going to try to solve war, and that's not gonna. I don't think Ciconia is going to solve war.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's a chance that Ryukishi might feel like, oh, if I put the story out now, it'll be insensitive. It'll be insensitive because of his beliefs that are so personal. And there's almost a risk of, if you fly too far into the war is bad, you fly into blaming people for defending themselves.
Yeah.
That's true, because the other stories, like Umineko and Higurashi, not getting into spoilers obviously, but they're stories where you can pretty confidently get behind the main theme. Like, it's pretty black and white. There's a good side and a bad side. Whereas in Ciconia, it's really really gray. So it must be really hard writing a story like this.
And I wonder if by choosing such an ambitious topic and then getting a little whiplashed by how ambitious it actually was, if Ryukishi was necessarily actually prepared to talk about it.
Yeah, because Ryukishi is someone who really cares about what he writes and how it will affect people and the little details of the things he's talking about. You think about how his life as a social worker affected how he wrote Higurashi. There's a lot of little nuances that he always takes into account when he tackles sensitive themes. He just always keeps into account the nuances of the sensitive topics he develops in his stories. And so I guess it's a story about war coming from Ryukishi would always be interesting, because he's so careful about what he puts in his stories, and then he just writes a story about war. It's just really out of the box for him in a way. So I guess he was the best writer to write about war, but also too good of a writer to write about war, because now he just won't write about it.
Yeah, I think that's a very real possibility.
He's set up a lot of potentially future things as well. Ciconia is a very unique setting, and that if you write a story that's 20 minutes into the future and NATO still exists, but it's just been weirdified somehow, America has gone full fascist, but otherwise NATO still exists. That isn't quite so dangerous. Your only premise is that America has gone fascist, versus something like AOU, which I have no idea how they got there. I cannot imagine a series of events that led to Russia and America being in the same faction. It just couldn't happen, I think.
They're literally considered one thing.
I mean, it could happen. I think the only thing that could have made them join forces is the fact that Leto exists, and there's this arms race, but instead of being an arms race, it's a Spiritium Fuel race, and Leto has everything.
Yeah, but on the surface, it's a Walls of Peace race. I did air quotes as I said that. You couldn't say.
Yeah. I definitely saw your air quotes.
Me too.
In this audio medium.
I saw it in our Ciconia chat room.
Actually, you know something? I just thought of this, but I was going to say, I feel like Leto wasn't the trigger that caused America and Russia to ally, because I feel like they're implied to be untouched in the story, because they have the best Spiritium fields. They don't seem to be they seem to be the most ahead of everyone else. And the thing I thought was, Japan is split in half. The war probably happened there. That was probably what everyone was going to war over. I have a feeling that that implies that maybe Japan was the trigger, and you had Russia and America allying, maybe to fight off China allying with India. I mean, it's still a really weird, like, it's
It is.
in practical terms, I cannot fathom it happening.
I mean, it is sci-fi.
But, that's just something I thought was like, yeah, like, I hadn't thought before about what the fact that Japan being split in half meant, but it's probably something similar to Germany being split in half at the end of the Second World War. Like you have an AOU occupation zone and you have a COU occupation zone,
And it's all centered around the Glass Sea, which we know is important.
Yeah, which is probably where.
So
like,
I guess there's all, because it's funny as you were saying that, I almost like spaced out a bit. Like, who's the antagonist gonna be? Is Ryukishi willing to throw another nation under the bus? This might only work if the antagonist is Japan. You said it at that same time.
Yeah.
What if he makes up new civilizations like fucking Atlantida comes back or something?
Yeah, fucking Atlantis like rises out of the waves.
Noxus first.
The Underminer comes up from underneath the ground. He's like declares war on peace and happiness.
Like the ancient Greeks come back from some cave.
The Neanderthals.
The enemy is the Agarthans.
Oh my god, is that a Fire Emblem Three Houses reference?
Is it?
Is it not?
Agartha is like a part of like a Hollow Earth conspiracy theory, and also like
It's a conspiracy theory?
ancient beliefs of like giants.
Wow.
There's a lot we can get into about Agartha, but I would honestly say the YouTuber Wendigoon does a better job than I could. So if you're interested.
I think we should instead pivot to full spoilers, maybe?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think there are better uses of the time we have left.
Yes. Before my laptop crashes.
Maybe after the episode I'll talk to you about
Okay.
it.
No, after the episode I'll have to go make dinner. It's almost 10 o'clock
Okay.
p.m.
Alright.
So, if you haven't fully read Higurashi no Umineko, we hope you enjoyed the episode up until now. You have like 2 hours and 15 minutes. It will probably get compressed to like 2 hours and 5 minutes of only Ciconia discussion, so you have a lot to chew on. And the adults will now move on to talk about full when they cry powers. So we hope you've enjoyed it, and see you when you've read great things. Bye.
See you in 2 months when we've finished editing this.
Yeah.
Bye!
So now that we are in full spoiler discussion, anyone want to open the discussion?
I'd love to talk about the conspiracy question.
The conspiracy will take a while. I wonder if we should touch on the like thing with Rosa and George and Battler.
That's
I'm fine with either.
This is reasonably quick, and like it was only I was only like trying to invoke the vibes, but like I just felt like it being midway into EP2 it might count as a spoiler, but like when George and Battler are sitting there, watch Rosa go to town on a daughter, like hitting a daughter, like, and and Battler's like, hey, we should probably like, and I guess Jessica's there as well, and Battler's like, hey, maybe we should stop this like act of child abuse, and George is like, no, listen to me, I am a wise adult, and I know all about these things. The best thing to do is to ignore it and hope it goes away. And like he's treated as very wise and very like worldly. Like it's it's kind of like Battler has the right idea, but he's just too energetic, and sometimes you just need to let child abuse be child abuse, and but like but we know that like from a thematic point of view, like that is not what Rikishi thinks, and like it's more illustrative of this is how people feel, and especially in 1984 or 1983, right?
6.
Wait, fuck, 86? Is it 86? Fuck, it's been too long.
Is it? No, I keep confusing Higurashi and Umineko.
It is 86.
It is 6.
I said 1984, and I'm like, no, that's the one date it isn't, because 1984 is the funny number.
I loved the book by George Orwell, which decided to like.
A witch decided to punish thought crimes.
Yeah,
I just thought of "Let It Slappin'," and I cannot let anybody that go unheard. Let it slappin' when you. When you see child abuse in front of you and you don't want to intervene, you just gotta let it slappin'.
Oh my god. Just gotta let it slappin'. Fuck. Anyway, that's all I was going to go with. There was like that's the vibe I think for the for Meow and his naive ideas about how we aren't doing enough. It isn't going to work, and everyone's like, no, you just gotta be chill. You just gotta let it, and what they're representing is the wisdom of the age, like wisdom of the time. Like that's what if you asked an adult, you're a kid, you're an adult, and you say, Mama, Papa, why aren't we finally solving all of these like border disputes? And that might be what they tell you. Rip Des again. But it isn't necessarily what Ryukishi thinks. It isn't necessarily what the story is going to think. It's just
it does have that vibe. So my burn thought is about the poem, not the poem, the two quotes at the end of the chapter. They are really reminiscent of Bernd Castell poems in the sense that you have the repetition and you have the edginess. It just feels like it uses Bern. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, yeah.
What you're saying is that Bern is actually Otto von Bismarck.
Let's see. Could I rearrange this into forming Frederica Berncastel?
Yeah. I mean, Berncastel is a town in Germany, right? So,
Okay, so where is Otto von Bismarck situated then? Right?
Yeah, where was he born? Like, was he born in Berncastel?
Oh shit, hold on, I got Wikipedia up.
No, let me look that up.
Yeah.
Was he a huge fan of Berncastel wine?
Born 1st of April. He was born on April 1st.
He was born in Germany.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Only a fool would be born on
Wait,
April
he
1st.
was born in Germany.
Schulnhausen. What?
He was born in Germany. Let me see where this city is situated. No, it's far away from Berncastel.
Wait, I have to really quickly recommend this show that I started watching last night. I'm 5 of 8 episodes in deep. It's called Bodies. It's like 4 detectives across 4 different time periods, and one of them is the 1800s, and it's so surreal that, like, back in those times, technology is so more advanced than you think. I picture 1800s, I'm like, caveman times?
I keep thinking that the World War I started like 1922. I'm wrong.
No, in 1914. Wait, is that when America joined? Are you doing the American?
Oh no!
22.
Oh no!
22 is well after it ended.
Yeah.
Forget it.
I'm just wrong. I'm like, oh yeah, the Roaring Twenties. That was when the war was happening, right?
Yeah. Everyone was having a great time, except for Prohibition and the First World War still going. Good thing it ended in January of 1939, just in time for people to catch a break before.
I'm sorry that I mentioned secret protagonists outside of the spoiler section. I forgot. That's a spoiler, and not just common knowledge.
Oh, well.
But, yeah, we'll see.
So what was it about the conspiracy? I've kind of forgotten.
Oh, I'll go over the note again.
Oh,
it was that around the point where Meow was wondering, I wish there was just one enemy we could go right for, and that made me think, the 3 kings, we don't even know if they're really real. Is it naive to think that it's one big conspiracy, as opposed to, is it naive to think that these are all coincidences, everyone just has their own agenda, and it's all popping up at once, and which is more accurate?
The reason I said this should go in the spoiler section, I assume everyone had the same idea simultaneously, is that the obvious comparison is Higurashi, where, like, Higurashi, I think, like, it has its strengths, but one of its weaknesses is that this random conspiracy is at the end, and, like, it doesn't really... Like, it wasn't built up, I think, is the main thing. Like, it's obvious that...
I think it was.
It's not obvious, but they have to... It works. They have to have a solution. They have to have a reason why, like... But, like, you kind of get this, like, random politics jump scare at the end of Higurashi, where, like... None of it was there before. Like, suddenly factions, suddenly, like, government conspiracy, suddenly the prime minister signed off on the extermination of all of Hinamizawa. Like, I I hope Ciconia doesn't go that way.
But I like that. It works so well in the context of Higurashi, where it's just, whoa, random plot twist out of fucking nowhere, and it just escalated everything 10 times. That's what Higurashi is.
Yeah. But it doesn't work as a mystery.
But Higurashi is not a mystery. It's not a mystery novel.
I know,
it's a mystery story, not a mystery novel.
Higurashi is more of a mystery thriller rather than like a traditional mystery like Umineko.
Yeah, like if someone said they figured out all of Higurashi in chapter 1, I'd be like, no, you didn't.
No, keep reading. Chapter 3 was enough because I feel like the only thing that Himatsubushi really sets up is like clarifying that Rika is the looper. Like,
don't forget about like Hanyu. Like, doesn't Hanyu not show up until EP 7?
What?
Which
Well, no, Hanyu does. Hanyu shows up in Mayakashi as a reference.
I was saying it's funny, in my essay, I just sort of skipped Himatsubushi because I couldn't find anything to say that connected my thesis.
Right.
But it's really connected to Higurashi's, like, the final author's note was all about, there's always an enemy that needs to be turned against, and like, I think that that's sort of a philosophy that's come up where you expect that there's going to be one big enemy in the Three Kings or whoever it winds up being, to like everyone's going to unite and turn up against. And this is literally going step by step as what Ryukishi was talking about as being a ridiculous like premise, and that's common of like, the whole world has to come together because aliens attacked. And yeah, Higurashi, by introducing the Tokyo, it almost fails that premise of trying to make a story without a villain, without an enemy for a sacrifice. That's the terminology. Trying to make a story without a sacrifice is that they introduced Tokyo, succeeded in not making them the sacrifice, but then didn't actually conclude that storyline. Where I think in this case they're foreshadowing a big shadowy organization, but I'm not sure it's necessarily going to be as black and white as they're the enemies.
That whole theme of there being a single enemy, it's actually brought up at the beginning of not at the beginning, in the chapter we previous last time, I think, and on this time too, because what's happening here is the Order, like, they need a target because they're blades. Like, the only way the Order can actually affect the world around them is if they are put to combat. Like, they need an enemy, and that also happens in real life. Like, when you're fighting and like turning against an organization, it feels like it's impossible. You're just a fucking someone, and it's this organization that's screwing everyone over. But if you got a face, you got a person, you got an enemy, like, there you have it. There you have your solution. Just remove that person. So like, it simplifies everything if you do have an enemy, and that actually goes back to when Meow is talking with Eraser Meow, and he tells him like, you have a trigger, and I can't show you the enemy because if I do, it will activate your programming or something, and you'll just go right ahead and kill them. So it kind of, as you were talking, Poke, it kind of put that idea in my mind of like the reason Eraser Meow doesn't actually show the picture to Meow is because like something people just want an excuse, something people just want to stop thinking, and the easiest answer is for there to be a single enemy, something sacrifice.
Yeah,
kind of like that.
Yeah, pretty much like that.
Yeah, actually, I think you guys have rekindled my faith in the story, because not that I was like lacking it, but I was a little worried. But I think like what I'm worried about with like the whole Higurashi thing was more like the problem with Higurashi is like Tokyo is not mentioned until the very end of the story, and then it's brought in as a critical plot element. Whereas in this one, it feels like, Tokyo, as in like conspiracies, public, like private secret orders and stuff, they are explicitly a part of the story from like the very start. Like this is early question arcs. and we've got all these like secret orders. They're explicitly in there, so the clues are there, but also like, yeah, I don't think it's a resolved question that they're responsible for everything and the solution is just to kill them all.
I have a lot of feelings on what I think exists and doesn't and how it exists in Ciconia. And I started thinking earlier that the three kings are named after fury, sorrow, and ridicule. And I was wondering if, like, they're somehow supposed to, like, not be a conspiracy, that they are a group of people, like, trying to push towards a certain goal, but more like Ryukishi trying to say that, like, they are different aspects of, like, human nature that, like, guides the world as a whole towards a certain destination.
Kind of like miracles and certainty.
I don't know.
Personified as people.
I could definitely see something like that.
It's tricky because I really, more I'm thinking about it, the more I feel like a satisfying conclusion. I'd be so excited to see how Ryukishi writes a story where they're truly, like, the idea of an enemy, a single sacrifice, is an illusion. Everybody just has to work hard in order to stop fighting each other. Gonna be interesting.
Isn't that... Umineko doesn't have a single enemy?
Umineko has several sacrifices.
Umineko does have a single
yeah,
enemy.
Does it? It does have several sacrifices.
No, but like as in a character that fills a role in the story, that is, they are unequivocally the bad guy, and they're the one that needs to be removed.
I mean, that's true. There isn't like there are antagonists that are like the ones that, I mean, like
not even Fedrin.
Burn Castell is the closest.
I'm thinking of like Kasumi. Kasumi is a sacrifice. But, like, she isn't treated that way.
I'm thinking in terms of, like, the tragedies of Rokonjima.
She's treated with empathy, but she's treated with notably a lot less empathy than fucking Takano. Like, yeah, I mean, she gets a bullet in the end, like, you know, and I mean, yeah, she has a tragic backstory, but she's also, like, a fucking gangster who, like, tortures people in her basement. Like... It isn't really like, even though you know, Angie has her whole speech about, like, you know, you can still do it, you reach out and reach inside and become, you know, a better person, but like none of Angie's speech is going to stop her getting shot. Like that's just something that's going to happen in the story. I guess something that Ryukishi did do is like the golden ending, like just what's it called, retcons the whole trip to Rokonjima. So, no, I definitely agree, like, Umineko is a great example of a story that doesn't have one enemy, generally, and doesn't have a lot of people who are just sacrifices. Like, there are some people who are just assholes and die because of it, like the base commander for Kinzo's backstory comes to mind, which notably is a story told by Kinzo, so shrug. But, yeah, like...
I consider Burn Castell the closest thing to a sacrifice, because she's the one who's in tears and loses. Like, even Featherine is like...
I guess, if you haven't read Higurashi, and only read Umineko in a vacuum,
yeah. But, like, Burn Castell is great. Burn Castell is great as a villain, because, like, she's one of those villains where at the end of the day, like, what have you actually done? She's still an immortal god. Like, the only thing that can kill her is boredom, and she wasn't bored. So, you know, really, you know... Yeah, she lost and she hates losing and she's a really bad loser. But, like, that's life. You know, like...
She got a happy ending. She got a funny scene with Lambda Delta.
And, and pieces of Erica.
Yeah. So... pieces.
Yeah.
I think you got it. Pieces of Lambda.
Oh, I completely misremembered the scene. Yeah, it's pieces of Lambda being sewn together and Erica picking up rice with chopsticks.
I love how horrific that scene is, and then like
yeah.
just like, by the way, this isn't spooky. Her innards are cotton candy. Like, I feel like Higurashi is a story about everyone being against you, but how that's not true, and that you don't really have any enemies.
You have no enemies
among the people you care about, but there are, like, external forces conspiring that, like, do not have your best interests at mind. Umineko is a story about how the people you love may also not have your best interest in mind if they are given money. No, that's not what Umineko is about. But in terms of that, they are both stories of conspiracies of people that you're supposed to trust. You're not really supposed to trust Irie and Kitaka now, but they do. So, either way, they are both stories about people in your circle, like, partially being against you and partially not being against you. And I feel like it would be... Because Umineko plays on the twists that Higurashi sets up for you, in a way.
Yeah.
I feel like Ciconia's natural evolution of that would be for people to be looking for, like, the red thread that ties everything together into one big bow of conspiracy. And for it to not be there would be the way to subvert the reader's expectations in Ciconia.
And this is keeping in mind that of all this talk I've completely forgotten. There's also like a whole meta narrative going on with the wisdom and like all of the spooky stuff going on. And how the heck is this going to be a loop? And I just have no idea where Ciconia is going to go for sure.
Yes, any other closing thoughts? Alright, good talk. No, I think he crashed.
Yeah. Okay, I have a topic for discussion then. What do we think about Ciconia's clock? Because it is it feels like something they kept from Umineko, but like a clock doesn't make sense as much in the story because it's something that happens over the course of weeks or months. I feel like
almost immediately when I saw this clock on my first reading, I started calling it the Doomsday Clock, and assuming that every time it ticks, it means something happened in the previous scene that made us closer to oblivion.
Oh.
And the thing that would be really cool,
sense.
I might have actually mentioned this in the last episode, is if eventually we start getting scenes that actually start helping the characters, and then you see the clock tick backwards.
that would be so cool. Yeah.
That would be the coolest thing, like, ever. Like, I would lose my mind if, like, we were, like, 2 steps from Doomsday, and then, like, there's a really powerful scene, and, like, the clock goes back 2 hours. And, like, there's time to, like I would lose my sanity. Like, that would be the coolest thing.
That would be really cool. And then we could go back and analyze all the scenes and, like, see how much they tick forward at certain events, and we can be like, oh, okay, we can start to make, like, ideas like, if this event doesn't happen, because this event ticked forward, like, 2 hours. And I would love that.
Idea.
I've been trying.
Oh my god!
I've been trying to keep track of the clock ticks. So far as I can tell, it's always the same amount. It's either 1 or 2 ticks forward. I can't remember right now.
I was definitely going to say, besides the fact that, like, it, pretty much is, like, ticking forward linearly and time is moving forward more than that, I was also going to say, like, a clock, a traditional clock, like, if the clock at the start of this is saying that it's 5 minutes to midnight when all this happens, like, that means nothing in the story. Like, these people are still awake when they're dreaming, you know, like, they're texting each other while they're asleep, basically. So...
Yeah.
Also, not even that. This is a story that spans the globe.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, yeah. Like, what does it mean that it's 5 minutes to midnight? Like,
the clock isn't even complete. There's all this, like, ruler and scroll and
like, okay, that means it's 7:15 somewhere else. Like,
it feels very reminiscent of, like, you know, like the Freemason sign, for example, is like the compass and something else. I can't remember, like, but, you know, like, I don't know. It just the archaic side of it just reminds me of, like, the symbology of, like, IRL chivalric orders. And then you've got what looks like the phases of the moon.
The phases of the moon. Oh my goodness. Yes, that's true, but they're also phases of Ciconia.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say it's the phases of the moon, but it seems like the moon is going, like, it's waning as you go clockwise, and then suddenly it's full.
Wait, is it waning and waxing backwards? Is that what you said before?
No, because it's jumping straight from like waxing or waning almost all the way straight to a full moon, which, like, it doesn't matter whether you read it forwards or backwards. That's like, it's like basically where it should be the 12 o'clock and the 6 o'clock. They should be opposed, but they're right next to each other.
Right. So I guess that means maybe the moon is a metaphor for the like as the moon wanes, it's like getting closer to oblivion, and then suddenly, oh, blood.
I was trying to find the clock, and I found a Steam community post from December 22nd of 2022
Oh no.
that was just Phase 2 is finally coming soon. And what their evidence was, I don't remember, or I don't mind revealing the source, but it's up to you to believe it or not. I remember some time ago I had a dream that turned out to be true, a
Oh
kind
my
of
God.
premonitory dream. I don't know why, but I feel I have a gift for knowing when I'm having one. I had a dream where I saw a calendar of 2023 with only the number
That's
19 and 2, and the calendar had a background of Ciconia Phase 2. It's coming in February 19th, and I'm like,
That reminds me, I saw the other, like a couple weeks ago, I saw Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Oh, no, it's the movie adaptation is Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory for the first time in ages. And there's a scene, like, right after they're told that there are golden tickets hidden in the chocolate, where someone's at, like, their therapist, and they're like, I've been having these dreams, and they feel so real. And the guy's like, oh, believing in dreams is just delusional, and stuff like that. And then the guy says, yeah, but I had a dream that the archangel came down and told me where the golden tickets are. And the therapist is like, tell me more. And it's like, but it's just delusional, you said. And he said, tell me where those golden tickets are now. Because everyone wants to know where the chocolate's at.
jeez.
Honestly, should we just end the episode? I feel like Des was about to end the episode.
Yeah, I'm. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Data Archive.
And this is Pokey.
This was Horse Fry.
This was Aya, and we will remember deaths forever.
Yeah.
Bye!
Bye.
Bye.